When you're playing at a table, sometimes it's helpful to remember that you're playing with actual people that have actual life experiences and things going on and things in their background. And, sometimes it's not super comfortable to talk about those things. So, fortunately, tabletop role playing games have safety tools that you can use. And there is one in Pathfinder, basically the tools for responsible play section of the player handbook, and I'm sure it's going to be in the remastered books as well. But I came across a website that kind of collects a whole bunch more tools that you can use in order to kind of help your game and make it more welcoming to players. So my name is Don. I'm trying to be the sly strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. So as I mentioned, we do have the welcoming environment section of the player handbook, and it basically covers some tools for responsible play. It covers lines and veils, and basically what that kind of boils down to is a line is exactly what it sounds like. It's a line in the sand. It's a point where some things you just don't want to discuss once it get past a certain point. And a veil are things that shouldn't be described in detail. So if you are coming across a situation, and it might be a particularly gory scene, or it might include a lot of really excruciating detail that some players might not be willing to go through. Well, you can use a veil in order to kind of dial back the detail of it. So those would be lines and veils. And then they have an X card. And an X card is basically a card you can tap on the table, or you can make a little X with your arms, and it notes to the GM and to the other players at the table that you've kind of reached a point where you need to stop and kind of think about how you're describing something and whether it needs to go that far. Now, these are just some safety tools that you can use, and these things should be discussed in your session 0, but there's more that you can do. Now, I came across a website called TTRPGSafetyToolkit.com. I actually saw it on Twitter, so the fact that it is kind of coming up on Twitter, number one, they've updated their website, updated the PDF that is included on this website, as well as updated their contact information, makes me think that this is kind of like a topic that a few people are talking about, but I just want to discuss it a little bit. So you can access their toolkit, and we'll get to that in a second, but there's also a section where you can learn more about what you want to do, why you might want to use a safety toolkit, why you might want to include these little safety systems at your table, as well as a new Contact Us form. So about the toolkit, once again, it just kind of tells you what the toolkit is and how it is a living resource. It is always being added to. You don't have to use everything. You don't have to use anything. If safety toolkits aren't something that you want to do at your table, well, then you have the option to do that, and that's an opinion. But I do prefer that it is discussed usually at the beginning of a campaign, when people are just sitting down and kind of getting used to everybody, what their limits might be. It also discusses the credits, attributions, and permissions, which basically these are the people who brought a bunch of different systems together, but it also kind of gives credit to everybody who has contributed, and I will do the same in the description for this video. And then we have the quick reference guide, and we'll go ahead and get to that. So on that website, you can go ahead and get a 4-page PDF that covers safety tools and why you might want to use them, why you might want to communicate them, all the things that are available in the kit, as well as maybe how you would introduce it, how you would talk about it with your table, introducing it at your session 0, what lines and veils are, which is in the Pathfinder books, the Luxton technique, which is basically having an open discussion between everyone at the table about whatever triggers there might be. There's also a consent checklist that you can go ahead and use, and an expansion on the X cards with the X, N, and O cards. Basically, the X card is the same when it's used basically in chat with your arms or actually using a physical card. Then that means that you kind of reached a stopping point. An N card is basically if someone feels they're headed towards something, so you can kind of prevent it before you actually get there. And an O card basically means that you are okay with the content. The next thing they describe is the Luxton technique, which means that when a participant comes across some triggering content, this might be a good point for a discussion. And the person who is having the issue can go ahead and they have complete control over the conversation. There's also the open door, meaning that basically at any time, if it is getting too intense, everybody has permission to get up from the table and take a break, as well as scheduling breaks up here, which basically means every 2 hours you should probably take a break anyways. Then as we get a little bit further, talking about some of the things after the game, which is basically trying to prevent the game from bleeding over into real life. If there's any aftercare needed, it might be good to occasionally have a debriefing so that people can kind of discuss how they're feeling if it isn't an active thing in their mind, but something that is just in the back of their mind. And then they have a section called Stars and Wishes with it. I like that title. And it's used to reflect on the session and to communicate feedback in a positive and forward-facing way. They also talk about some actual play, as well as, once again, these are some credits, acknowledgments, as well as the fact that there are more resources, and we'll get to those in a second, translations and updates that you can always go ahead and look at. Now, that PDF isn't the only thing that's available on the website. They actually have a folder to go ahead and print off cards so that people can actually have physical cards at the table. They have different panels that you can go ahead and look at. They have tools and resources, as well as translations into other languages. In addition to full credits for everything that is included in this toolkit. So basically, it's kind of your one-stop shop for a safety toolkit for playing tabletop role-playing games for the enjoyment of everybody at the table. Now, at the conclusion here, I'd kind of like to say that I realize not everybody is going to be using a safety toolkit or going to be using the X card or the N card. You can pick and choose what you want to use or don't use anything at all. However, the resources are available, and even if you think that your table doesn't need this at all, it might be worth the discussion. A lot of times you'll hear that this should happen at a session 0. You know what session it should happen at? The one you're in right now. It doesn't have to happen at the beginning. You can go ahead and have this whenever you want. And, you see some of the most stoic people might be stoic because they have things that happened in the past, and the people who you would think would have tons of issues might be watching a 50-hour Faces of Death marathon on the weekends. You have no idea unless you talk to the people. Now, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.